One moment.
Yes, please.
You see, we use this special book.
Are you still no?
Yes.
Mingle.
Okay, question. You know how you said to talk to people?
Yes.
Does that mean I have to strictly be like, what country are you? And or can I just be conversational?
You can be
Be
anything you want to
conversational.
be.
Really?
Be your own person.
Okay.
Smile lots. Have a good time.
I always smile.
An honorable chair. The threats and challenges Russia faces are the common enemies of the free nations. Russia considers international terrorism to be a treacherous phenomenon that leeches off of government instability and international animosity. As the United Nations, our common task is to raise an effective barrier against this evil. The Russian Federation endorses the fight on terrorism that has come to the attention of the world in the past few years. We must remember that for all nations, terrorism is a collective struggle that the world has come to confront and must continue to do so. The UN, in this new initiative to silence the bearers of hate and destruction, is invaluable and is a base in which the world has formed its anti-terrorism coalition. What must be recognized by this session, more than any other in the past, is the tools needed in which to fight this growing threat. Neither bullets nor the world's greatest arsenal will halt the advancement of these blatant violators of international law. What we must wage the fight against terrorism with is our armory of ideals that this body has come to represent. Today's Russia is ready to tackle such issues as international terrorism and is never before open, responsible, and ready for cooperation and equitable partnerships. Russia is a nation of long-standing history and a model of progress. Yet, as a world power, we understand the limits to our influences and the responsibility we have to the world in respect to international law. In the coming days, Russia looks forward to debating policy on some of the world's most pressing matters. In Iraq, we would like to extend our sentiments to the United States and say that more international cooperation must take place in this country. To Iran and the other nations reeling from conflict, Russia understands your plight and intends to implement the processes needed to achieve stable economic societies. Russia would also like to remind this committee that they must utilize the existing articles of the Geneva Convention and the idea of national security in forming a cohesive definition of war. And we would also like to reiterate that preemptive strike is not a militant norm. To Korea, the time for peace is now, and the long road to reunification is possible, with some key outside figures playing a more marginalized role. Russia would also like to reaffirm its commitment to a new round of peace talks and to discuss the initial steps of peaceful reintegration. In the discussion in North Korea, the implementation of sanctions will not be an option, for we have seen the debilitating effects that this ineffective form of diplomacy has on the people of Libya, Sudan, and Iraq, not on destabilizing the governments of these nations or the other aims that sanctions are meant to achieve. With a further push for industrialization in developing nations, we as an international body must remember the effect that this industrialization has on our air quality. The United Nations needs to use its existing tools to help these nations industrialize, but also bear in mind its effects on the world's most fragile resources. In the conference, Russia is looking forward to working with all nations to form policy that will further promote peace in our world. We are especially looking forward to working with nations such as the United States, for as we know, the U.S. is one of the biggest contributors to helping developing nations. The U.S. is also a key international player in politics, but we must remember that America needs to be reintegrated into the international community and abide by the rules and laws that we as the world have come to agree upon. To Iran, we hope that with our support, you will properly adhere to such documents as the NPT and continue your commitment of responsible use of nuclear technology. Finally, Russia would like to applaud China for its role in cooling tensions between the United States and North Korea and its ideas of a multipolar world. In closing, fellow delegates, the very importance of our role here today may not be recognized by you, and the solutions we implement today may not be fully enacted in our lifetime, but Russia is willing to take the first step in utilizing the UN as the single greatest tool for change in the world. Our nation will not stand for terrorism or the groups that undermine sovereign governments, for we as the world have the ideals in hand to combat to combat these barriers to progress. Our international relations and protocols then must be based on a system of a law of dictatorship that will sustain this enclave of hope for all mankind. Let not the dead hold back the living as we decide our policies today. And as we begin, we must remember that although there are nuclear weapons, greater armies, and new conflict, there still only exists one forum for peace, the United Nations. Thank you.
But as a whole, like on bigger countries, like having more like community activities for like larger cities so that they get to know one another would be key.
This issue affects all of Lebanon strongly believes that it's time to rise to the occasion. Children by no means are born with options as to where they end up, and seeing as such, Lebanon believes they should be first and foremost addressed. Many issues cause homelessness, which makes this issue really hard to pinpoint, and it's not going to have one solution. We need the joint unity of all the nations here to come up and to help with solutions for this. There's various things such as escape from sexual, physical, and mental abuse, loss of home due to war or funds, also being born into poverty in general. And it really affects these children, and they don't have anybody to turn to. And if we could just join together, perhaps, like, there's a lot of NGOs, non-government organizations that work together, but unfortunately, some of them, they aren't quite aware of one another. So Lebanon believes that perhaps if we encourage the ones within our nations that are stationed there to perhaps work together more closely together, we can affect and reach more children in the short time that we have. And with that, I will the remainder of my time for questions.
The Russian Federation fully recognizes the threat that homelessness causes in our world. As we all know, homelessness is a complex problem, and it is the goal of this committee to meet such a problem with an equally complex and fully effective solution. With such a problem, Russia sees the need for two types of plans. Firstly, to combat the already existing number of homeless, front-end solutions are necessary. These plans must include training and education, job opportunities, and more available funds for such plans. Russia also recommends the use of back-end solutions, which will prevent future increases in the number of homelessness. Russia would like to see cooperation with the World Bank and the IMF in setting up a social welfare program to better the situation. The human rights of all is a necessary step that this committee needs to take and make sure that children are protected in the world. With that, I go to questions.
Question for the delegate. Lebanon's what point do you rise?
Favorite speaker? Yes. Lebanon was wondering if there was anything in particular that was effective in Russia with homelessness, or anything that Russia really wanted to get out there with things to help with homelessness.
Yes, we have several social organizations already in place, such as, it's a Russian word that I'm not going to pronounce, but in English it's the night shelter, and it's where children can go and find food and shelter for however long they need it. And we also have many community programs already in place. And with such programs, a path towards the eradication of homelessness can be made. And Russia believes that we should try to find an international plan like this that can be put forth.
Groups, you have different religions inside of the Muslim and Arab people there. You also have other Arab rebels coming in from other countries and fighting insurgencies against the United States and coalition forces there. These are other issues that we must take care of while we're looking at a government and while we're moving towards those steps.
Speaker?
Yeah.
You mentioned in your statement of goals paper that was posted online that the Russian delegation feels that there must be an international law concerning preemptive strikes. Does the Russian delegation feel that strikes in Chechnya would be part of this international law, or how would that be done?
You're relating these things to two different, completely different subjects. The conflict or quasi-war that you're speaking of here between the United States and Iraq is an international issue. Chechnya is an internal terrorist organization, much like you would say, I don't know, for lack of a better example, California or the Michigan militia, becoming terrorists against the United States. Those are two completely different separations. That's just how it is.
Thank you, Dr.
For starting this first very long and tedious journey on the road to something that is so extremely important, especially in a body whose entire center is seeking peace. That is what we are here for. The first thing we would like to point out is a very concise definition will be of utmost importance. Any loopholes we leave, any loopholes at all that we leave open to nations to interpret, personal interpretation could completely weaken any resolution we found to make. First of all, to say that there is not any definition that we could go off of at all would be somewhat disrespectful to things that have already happened. The definition of aggression is somewhere that I believe would be a very good place to start, which says the use of armed force by a state against the sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence of another state, or in any manner inconsistent with the Charter of the UN is aggression. I believe that's a very good foundational point for this body to start at. War in and of itself, as well as aggression, should be from state to state governments, non-state to state actors, or state actors to non-state actors cannot constitute war. Because how can you define clearly who a non-state actor is? How can you define who it is that you're fighting? Of course, this does lead to questions of whether or not the Geneva Convention will apply. It is obviously everyone's aim to keep every citizen of every nation and every organization safe. However, we cannot justify making the definition of war inclusive of this just for those purposes. We'd like to point out that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights would also cover this, and any nation torturing, mutilating, hurting anyone in any such forms that would be any way detrimental to people's physical being, that is simply wrong. Also, we'd like to point out that multilateralism must be addressed in the definition of war. We must come together and decide as a whole who's fighting, where we're fighting, what we're fighting exactly. We must come to the UN and ask them exactly how it is that if a nation is declaring war, if nations have factions within them that are uncontrollable terrorist organizations, guerrilla organizations, any organizations like that, it is their sovereign right to deal with them. And while it does threaten the international community, they cannot be held responsible for the actions of those within their nation. We've seen several times in Palestine, Israel, and several other nations sitting within this very room that terrorism has affected them, but they cannot, in their own means, stop them. However, it does not give other nations a right to invade them and to take into their own hands things that are going on within their own sovereign borders. No preemptive strikes should ever be correct. We've seen time and time again where there's been unjustified cause of suspicion, unjustified things. It would open a Pandora's box, literally, to wars all over the world. The United Nations needs to be incorporated in all of these things. Also, to agree that, I just want to reiterate that we agree with the Lebanese delegate saying that it is not a state's fault if there is non-state actors working within their borders. Of course, they must take any action possible to stop these things. However, we are not going to justify things by these means. Also, Uganda would just like to point out that sanctions will never help a country, almost in any circumstance. And if UN together as a whole decides to do this, it still needs to consider the debilitating effects it will have on that nation.
Area that Uganda feels the most progress can be made in regards to developing industrializing their nations. If it is possible for us to provide some sort of incentive to donor nations and NGOs and businesses that would allow them to go an extra step beyond just providing the cheapest and most inefficient of resources to the countries which they're providing and help them to set up an infrastructure that is more environmentally friendly, then we need to do so, because these nations are growing more and more numerous as less nations are remaining unindustrialized across the world. Now you might have questions.
Other questions for the speaker?
I was really impressed during the caucus how we all got together and we all started firing off ideas and started putting forth, I guess, this working paper that, I don't know, I started writing down ideas for. I see a lot of ideas for education in the United States, the industry regulation. I'm pretty sure we have a treaty around here somewhere that might already be in place. We should probably look for that and see if there's any way we can update that or bring ideas from that. So if anybody has a treaty like that with them, we should bring it up and start talking about that. And when we hear about rules and regulations, I'd like to hear like what types of set rules like for emissions and, or I mean, are you talking about taxes and stuff like that? We need to know. We can't just say rules and regulations. It's kind of bland, kind of empty. Let's see. Aid and donating, the private industries, technology. I'd like to see a lot more suggesting of the technology sharing, because, like I said, I trust the belief that if we just give technology and machinery, it's probably worth more than money, because that way they have the experience and the equipment available to them to use. And so I will take questions now.
No, now you say Nigeria.
In place right now, it was 4,000 for 5,000 that we should work on that. But
Hi. Why are you videotaping me?
Now.
Strongly what?
Encourages
non-governmental organizations
such as...
Can I try NGOs?
Do you have a copy of this, or is this the only copy?
Or no?
If it gets, if you get thrown out, grab it, take it home with us, right? And we'll look at it.
NGOs, blood?
Such as... Because then we can talk in more detail about whether this...
Doctors Without Borders.
Or not. And then if you
to continue and expand their work.
Okay. And we'll see how that goes. Gina doesn't know that she's on film.
I am?
Great. First of all, I'd like to just congratulate me on passing the resolution. As a gift, that was wonderful. But to speak about this topic, it's a very important topic in this committee. First of all, we'd like to say there will always be flaws in an organization that has no physical force to back the resolutions that it makes. And that anything that depends heavily on the will of 90 nations, as we've already seen tonight, everyone has their own opinion. So there will always be trouble in enforcing people to have will. People's will will never completely align, so there'll always be skirmishes and problems. As a developing nation of Uganda, we'd like to first stress, first and foremost, that communication is of utmost importance. As far as this goes, every single thing we see, if we cannot communicate effectively what it is that we want to have in resolutions that are taking place, even person to person, I know, even writing notes, if you haven't received any of your notes in this committee, it's very frustrating if you don't know how to communicate. And several nations in the world are suffering from that exact problem. They don't have as high of technology as other nations. They don't have the kind of communication that it takes to be fast and quickly efficient. And while we do praise the fact that the world is advancing in technology, we realize the need for nations who can't afford that technology to have it. We also agree very strongly with new initiatives to standardize healthcare, especially online, having services that would inform the people with information, education of utmost importance. However, Uganda is very concerned with the fact that nations who are in greatest need of health information are also nations who do not have access to the internet to get it. Personally, in the nation of Uganda, there is barely 1% of our citizens online. And I'm pretty sure the other 99% who all have AIDS and are dying of communicable diseases would also be in need of that. So in considering communication, we have to not only consider the amount we have, how it's dispersed, the minimum that everyone is receiving, but also how many people are actually going to physically have access to this. We would also say that this committee has gone over and over and over economic sanctions and where do they belong. But it is obvious, painfully obvious, that they need to go somewhere. We believe that this is the place. We need to talk about whether or not we're going to be using sanctions and or if we can find an alternative to sanctions. Although Uganda personally does not know what that could be. And we also need to figure out how sanctions are going to, as Iberia said, affect the government more than it affects the people, if that's possible. With that, Uganda, we do have a question.
Point of inquiry to speak.
That there are still
What point do you run?
Oh, sorry. Point of inquiry to speak.
Speak degree or yes.
You mentioned that there are still a few problems. Do you have anything specific that is not currently being proposed in the new meeting?
Covered because we submitted an amendment. And I would just, I would suggest do that to everyone who's not in favor of this resolution right now.
The World Bank and the countries to set up initiatives that it has to meet. Of course, it follows World Bank standards because they are providing the capital for these nations. But they always take into account and they always tailor their stipulations to governmental needs.
Delegate from Rwanda to oppose you on this.
You said you don't grasp what goes into.
I think Rwanda is missing the point here. The closed-door sessions are only one step in the process that built a partnership between the World Bank and the nations that it is providing money to. The World Bank takes steps in first initiating a relationship with the country that it intends to donate with, setting up plans, and providing certain. It is so complex that it would take. I mean, that is why the World Bank Charter is so long, and that we cannot just institute a new organization within a few operatives. The steps to providing money for nations is complex, and it should be that way because we know the money is going to the correct places. The closed-door sessions are only one of the final steps in implementing money. That is only a place where votes are decided where this money is going. Initial steps to form partnerships are precursors to that closed-door sessions. There is so much information and so much partnership between the World Bank and countries for the closed-door sessions that it would probably not make any difference whether these sessions were closed or open door.
Thanks so much. Seriously, these partnerships
Are you happy now?
Oh, now it is. I think. I gotta go stand behind you. Don't stay behind me, I'm short. Safe place to hide.
Behind Gina?
Behind me, but I'm short. This is gonna be so.
That's for me, really? Not here, so. I'm not going up there with you.
Good evening. This resolution, which was passed nearly unanimously, was a combined effort of the entire social committee. The debate in the room addressed the incredibly complex and deep roots of homelessness among youth. This resolution encompasses each and every one of those deep causes. It provides for solutions that will really work and will be able to be applied in all situations. Education, a huge requirement for many nations for a resolution, is a main part of our resolution. A diversified group of nations, including Russia, the United States, Sudan, Cuba, and many others, came together to agree upon such issues as education, counseling, homeless shelters, and more. This resolution not only provides for basic and immediate needs, but also provides a solution to prevent youth in the future from becoming homeless. Life skills and vocational training, cooperation with NGOs, and funding are all addressed in the resolution. It is important to remember that nearly a day and a half was spent on this resolution. The authors, including Russia, were extremely open and willing to change the resolution to fit the needs of the entire committee. Numerous amendments were made to encompass the needs of all nations, and through this, the resolution became something that leaves no one out. No country, family, or individual child will be forgotten through this resolution. The provisions of it are those in which every nation can agree upon. The rights of the child are the most important thing that needs to be addressed. This resolution completely provides for those rights. We cannot forget that the most important issue before us is the homeless youths themselves. This resolution was an effort of every single nation. The authors were open to amendments from any nation. Those who were against the resolution did not communicate their concerns and did not submit any amendments to the resolution. The resolution encompasses everything that is needed and was extremely open to change. It is obvious that nearly every nation here can and has agreed to the resolution, and it is quite obvious that this resolution deserves to be passed. Thank you.
Threats of weapons of mass destruction freeing the oppressed people of Iraq. Because of these legitimate reasons, the United States felt that it had the authority to invade Iraq against international wisdom. This resolution was crafted in the idea of salvaging good out of a war that should have been prevented and continuing what good the U.S. has done in Iraq. In this spirit, this resolution was created with one major idea in mind: the Iraqi people. The Special Political Committee wanted to see the Iraqi people given their nation back, with protected right to choose their form of government. To do this, one must understand that to give the Iraqis a chance to choose their government, they must participate in a democratic vote protected from as much corruption as possible by a multi-international force sponsored and drafted by the UN. This resolution sets out to create promised opportunity for Iraq. We have included timetables that are fair and reasonable to create and ratify a constitution. We have created an atmosphere in which the Iraqi people can best decide what they want for their future through representative talks overseen by the UN Secretary General. We have included in this resolution fair and reasonable deadlines for the return of power to Iraq from the hands of its protectors. We have added insurances against prolonged occupation that would severely undermine Iraq's right to govern itself. We have addressed humanitarian aid and concerns over the welfare of Iraqi citizens who, after years of dependency on the oil for food program and government rations, due to oppressive sanctions and terror, are in severe need of our unbiased help. We have addressed the threat of terrorism by border control to cut down on foreign insurgents with violent grudges. We have suggested a multinational coalition of the willing to supplement the forces already there in an attempt to lessen the feeling of forceful occupation among the populace and the world. This resolution succeeds in providing what promises, provisions, support, insight, and understanding that the Special Political Committee could muster during intense debate and resolution. It is far from perfect. There are many concerns over word issues and hidden agendas that Russia feels can be corrected today by this body. But Russia feels that it is an excellent resolution from which to base the eventual reality of an Iraq freed from tyranny and on a path to the future of its choosing. Thank you.
Minor, but it is no less important in its streamlining qualities. And as for the argument against the idea of expanding existing organizations for adoption and fostering and saying that more should indeed be created, while there are doubtlessly special cases in the world where the creation of these organizations is needed, the expansion of current ones is a better immediate step, since it is better to have fewer larger organizations that are more coordinated with each other than many small organizations that have absolutely no idea what the others are doing. And as far as funding is concerned, somebody pointed out that Clause 10 deals more with funding than Clauses 5 or 6 can and should, which is true, and it does make specific references to UNICEF and Oxfam. These are both large international organizations that do a lot to fund different smaller organizations around the world. And as far as anything beyond this, it would be better to utilize smaller regional organizations such as regional banks. With that, I yield my time to questions.
We'll draw up a speakers list. All those wishing to speak in favor of this amendment. Liberia.
Good morning. The resolution that is now before this committee on the definition of war is a testament to the hard work, cooperation, and determination of the legal committee to finally create a working definition of war. The Russian Federation firmly believes that this resolution must be passed by this GA plenary, so we don't have to return to the era of quasi-inferred wars, conflicts without subjections to the hallowed Geneva Conventions, and questionable infringements on sovereignty. This resolution, firstly and very basically, provides a definition of offensive war. Without this clause, the resolution would ultimately lack the cohesiveness it now has, given tight and not easily infused definition of war. Further, UN Resolution 3314 of 1974, the definition of aggression, is reaffirmed as a basis for the definition of war. It outlines those acts other than preemptive strikes that can be considered acts of war. This resolution recognizes preemptive strikes are not to become a model for solving disputes. In light of the recent actions of the United States in Iraq, we've defined what, when, and how preemptive strikes can be legally used. Russia staunchly views preemptive strikes as a dangerous precedent. And we fear that without this resolution, any nation can preemptively strike another without proper evidence, leading the world on a downward spiral towards the eventual destruction of the ideals the UN was founded upon. The clauses about preemptive strikes in this resolution require that countries report to the Security Council before acting. The Security Council must approve before action can occur. Despite qualms over efficiency, this is the best way to preserve the important role of the UN and still allow countries to take preemptive actions to protect themselves. Additionally, this resolution makes it clear that the Geneva Conventions are to apply to wars both declared and undeclared, and reaffirms that war happens between sovereign states. Instead of abandoning these elderly conventions, it reaffirms their importance and broadens their scope. Russia believes that the Geneva Conventions must be imposed upon undeclared wars between states to keep those conflicts subject to international law, and it is this plenary's responsibility to uphold, preserve, and exercise the principles of international law, which this resolution accomplishes. Domestic conflicts between a state and a faction, or between two factions, is also addressed. And without legitimizing terrorist groups, the resolution still extends the UN Declaration on Human Rights to such conflicts in view of the Geneva Conventions. To preserve the sovereignty of nations, it leaves them with the ability to act without the interference of the UN or the Geneva Conventions to quell domestic disputes unless UN intervention is explicitly requested. This resolution was delicately crafted by the legal committee, and it redefines international law in such a manner as to protect sovereignty, uphold the Geneva Conventions, and keep the integrity of the UN intact. Now that non-state actors have become much more of an active force in the world, we need a definition that can apply more relevantly. This resolution accomplishes that. Russia believes that you must all vote for this resolution. International law depends upon it, your sovereignty depends upon it, and the United Nations depends upon it. We have operated for far too long without a working definition of war. Now is your chance to change that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Canada's second resolution, we thought it would be more beneficial to include it in the first resolution. We were unable to do that in committee, but we were hoping that, as seeing as a lot of nations in here are addressed in this amendment, being developing nations, we're hoping that everything is going to address exactly address these in the resolution. I only have questions.
Specifically, why don't ship
Because it focuses on their aid. I mean, I don't have the amendment in front of me, I can't quote it, but it focuses directly on what needs to be done.
I know that you don't have the amendment in front of you, but how does it do that? Wait, what can happen? How does it direct the aid to develop? How does it direct specifics?
It knows the need of the specific
quite make it on its own. However, the ideas that discuss solution capture have been put into this amendment, and it's very important for developing nations. They should also support this. It addresses certain problems that they have, and then again, to deal with, I've heard that nations regarding the centers or stations for treatment, they are all decided upon by the region. I don't see where they're that big of a problem over this, since in a way they are deciding what to address where. I don't know.
Question to the speaker. Where in the amendment does it say that the regions decide that these hospitals
I don't have it in front of me right now. I believe there was, let's see, in one of the subclauses, I believe it stated that regional councils will decide upon the, I don't remember the exact word, but the placing of the stations.
next time I come up and speak, could you bring the amendment with you so that you can vote it?
Oh.
We understand that you haven't memorized verbatim the amendment.
Any other comments or questions? Scott, your eyes.
One thing for you to see that. Would you agree with me saying that the cause in question is after cause 4, subcause F, subcause 2? It says something along the lines of entitled, or that regional councils are entitled to health stations and programs.
Yes.